Hello everyone, my name is Kiana Reynolds, and I will be presenting my topic about the influence of minimal competency on high school students. So what is minimal competency testing? Minimal competency testing, also known as MCT, is defined as an assessment of evidence to determine one's ability against a set of competency standards. MCT produce evidence to make a judgment or decision about whether the person is competent in relation to a particular standard. So, minimal competency testing is without question one of the most hotly debated subjects in testing today. Students are held accountable for their performance before they are promoted or even graduate high school. This means that students have to pass the MCT to move on. So here is the history of MCT. The history of MCT all began in the 1970s. In the year 1976, the state of Florida passed a law which required high school students to pass a minimal competency test in order to graduate. Many other states now have similar laws, and students across the nation have to take the MCT in order to move on to the next grade or graduate high school. During the 1970s, there was considerable criticism of the schools, and accusations of lower achievement were made. Many people see minimal competency testing a means of holding the schools accountable for graduation of literate students who will at least be able to perform the basic skills of reading, writing, and arithmetic. All students will be tested for minimal competencies, and failures will be remedied before graduation. Students who are unable to fix their weaknesses and pass the test before graduation will be given certificates other than school diplomas. So since the state of Florida passed the law, a large amount of time in education has been dedicated to the conceptualization and definition of minimal competency testing. So, the history continues. Minimal competency testing policies was originally intended to add meaning to a high school diploma. For example, students had to demonstrate at least minimal levels of knowledge and skills if they were to graduate or at least move on to the next grade. This means that students had to know the basic skills of reading, writing, and math in order to move on to the next grade or graduate. It was required that minimal competency testing was developed to exceed performance-based standards, which require students to pass the test or graduate. So, for graduation, it was assumed that these minimal levels would translate into successful job performance. That means when they graduated, they would be able to get a successful job or go to college. So how does MCT positively and negatively affect students? Here you will find the pros and cons of minimal competency testing. The pros include improvements in basic reading and mathematics skills, and let's not forget in writing. Over the years, students will be allowed to learn more skills for reading and mathematics. Learning these skills will allow students to pass a test and graduate high school. Also, there will be an increase in test scores. An increase in test scores means that the graduation rate will rise. That means the graduation rate will increase over the years. Also, the school will be awarded for increasing the rate of students passing the MCT. The cons are increasingly dropout rate for more successful students, a decrease in academic performance, and the lack of transfer to higher order skills. Successful students who had to take the test more than once were at risk of dropping out of school early or decreasing their academic performance. All year, students have worked hard and cannot seem to pass the test. This means if they cannot seem to pass the test, their academic performance will decrease. That means their grades will go down, or either they will drop out of school because they cannot pass the test. Several researchers predicted that students who does not achieve the required score may drop out or does not graduate or move on to the next grade. So what are the goals of minimum competency testing? Here we have two goals. The first goal is student diagnostic, which is the low stake testing. The low stake testing identifies students that are not reaching minimum standards so that they can receive additional help. So those students that are not reaching the minimum standards will receive additional help, such as tutoring, maybe after hours schooling, or maybe being identified as an ELL, English language learner, or having a learning disability. The second goal is student incentive. This is also known as the high stake testing. The high stake testing identifies students reaching or not reaching standards to determine who is promoted. So the student incentives mean that those that are reaching the standards will be promoted, and that will be their incentive. Being promoted or graduating high school will be an achievement. Now take a look at this picture right here. This is the picture that shows a graph of minimum competency testing results for students in the 3rd grade to 11th grade. The results fluctuate throughout the years, causing a drastic decline when students enter the 11th grade. So as we can see, in 3rd grade, the results started out high. And as the years go by, the results starts to go down when they get in 5th grade and go back up to 6th grade, which they're in middle school now. And it goes down 7 and going back up in 8th. And then you see it goes back down in the 11th grade. So as students begin their first year of testing, the results begin to increase. As the students get closer to 11th grade, the assessment results begin to decline. Research shows that students are becoming overwhelmed with tests. That means year after year, they're tired of taking the same test. Therefore, we can see students are doing better in reading than in math. Teachers are focusing on reading more than math. And obviously, as we can see, that the focus is mainly on reading than in math. So based on the results, students perform better on the reading test than the math test. So our assessment instruments. The assessment instruments include the paper and pencil format. The mathematics portion of the test requires multiple choice questions. The reading portion of the test often requires both multiple choice and written response questions, but most times it will be multiple choice. The writing portion only includes a written response answer. That means the student will be allowed to have a certain amount of time to answer just one question. The amount of time to take the test falls between 30 to 60 minutes. So for each portion, students will have at least 30 to 60 minutes to complete the test. So what is the setting of MCT? Well, as we all may know, students are usually taking tests in the classrooms or in the computer lab. Nowadays, the tests are administered in the computer labs because the tests are performed on the computers. But as research says, that the tests are going back to paper-based because the results are lower than it was on paper-based. Teachers around the world are trained to administer the test to many different students. Now let's get to the ethical issues. You see, there are several ethical issues that comes with MCT. These issues include students having a learning disability or being an English language learner. There is a debate about whether MCT accurately assesses individuals with specific learning disabilities. So let's think about it. Does this test give more time to students with learning disabilities? Or is the test given in the simplest form as possible? Those with learning disabilities may not understand the question like everyone else would. So, is this test really giving everyone a chance to pass the test? Minimum competency testing also only comes in the English version, putting English language learners, ELL, at risk. Those who are born with limited English will not be allowed to understand questions and answers on the test. Therefore, we will add additional resources to help those that are in need. Additional resources include providing extra help, giving them an English/Spanish dictionary, or even a translator. So we have cultural issues that goes along with the minimum competency testing. The minimum competency testing has been characterized as a racist means of denying educational credentials such as high school diplomas to minority students, those with socioeconomic status, low socioeconomic status, and to African American students in particular. This argument is based on the failure rate of black students, which historically has been greater than that of white students on these and other academic achievement tests. So results show that predominant white students does much better than African American students. Also, as we can tell, the test requires one size does not fit all. This means that the test is designed for only one particular group and does not extend to other groups. Therefore, the failure rate is higher amongst African American and Hispanic students. As we see the picture over here to your right, it states, for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. As we all know, that there will be only one person that will be able to climb the tree in an easy manner, and that would be the monkey. The elephant will not be allowed to climb the tree, the fish, nor the dolphin, or the penguin, or the dog. So, conclusion. Minimum competency testing has affected students both positively and negatively. Therefore, the testing has its pros and cons. Educational reforms need to take place and make the test more beneficial to all groups of students, those with learning disabilities and English language learners. So, in the future, as the test improves, the passing rate will increase. That means as the test improves, the test scores will go up, and the schools will be awarded because of the testing rates